So first of all, I'd just like you to tell me again when you were born.
Okay, I was born in July of 1929.
Okay.
It was in July. It was in August of 1929 that the stock market crashed,
Uh-huh.
which is what actually caused the Great Depression to get started.
Uh-huh. So that was out in the East. It was felt immediately in the East, right? And
Yeah, it
you
took about
guys,
2 years before it started to affect the whole country. Things didn't happen quite as rapidly then as they do now
uh-huh.
around the world.
And your family was living in Utah, right?
We were living in Salt Lake City, and well, actually, it was in kind of South Salt Lake. See, I think they called it Sugar House, was the
Okay,
area.
yeah. That area is still in existence. It's kind of in the middle of Salt Lake though. But
Right. Well, it was kind of the south of Salt Lake then.
okay. Okay, yeah. So you were living in Sugar House at the time, and your father was a landscaper, right?
My father was a landscape architect
Oh, okay,
and
sorry.
landscape. So he was trained by his father, and also at BYU. He took a number of classes in that idea.
Okay. So his father was also a landscape architect. Okay.
Well, right. His father was set apart by Brigham Young. He wasn't so much a landscape architecture as he was a developer of fruit trees. Is
Okay.
mainly what he did. But my dad kind of branched out on that a little bit
Okay. And he made a living off of it too. So
for quite a while. Yeah.
so how did things start to affect you and your family? I mean, I know you were really, really young at the time, but I'm sure that you've heard it from your parents and whatnot. When did things start to really, when did it hit home for you guys? Um,
It hit home about 2 years after it started back east. It
okay.
was in about 1930, 31. Yeah, 1931 it started hitting us.
Okay. And could you tell me a little bit the process that your dad experienced? I know that he kind of, was it sudden for him, or did work just slowly phase out? How quickly did it
Well,
hit?
it kind of slowly phased out, but he thought he still had work, and then it just all of a sudden kind of stopped. What happened was that the Great Depression was an upset in the whole economic system,
Uh-huh.
money deal, and a lot of people still had money, but they wouldn't spend it. They were afraid. A lot of fear involved in the Great Depression, kind of like
Uh-huh.
what's going on in the world today, only for a different reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So he ran out of work, and then what did he do after?
What he happened now? A lot of this I know because I taught history for a number of years, and I studied the Great Depression.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so it's not all my memory. It's a lot of it's from what my dad has told me and what I've learned in studying it. So I don't. Sometimes I won't know which is which.
Well, that's fine. That's all good. Um, so let me see. So he started doing that. He lost his job. Um,
Actually, my actual memory did not start until we had left Salt Lake. So this first part is just what I've been told.
mhm. Yeah, well, I wouldn't expect a 2-year-old to remember all that stuff. So you guys moved south after that, right?
Well, we was going to homestead. You
Okay.
know what homesteading is?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's where you kind of sign things up with the government. You say, hey, if I improve this land, and it was make a structure and something about farming. or was
Well,
farming?
you have to make a place to get water, a well,
Okay.
whatever, and then you have to have some kind of a dwelling place built.
Oh, okay.
Then, and that you're given 5 years to do that in. And if you can do that in 5 years, then the government signs the whole 60 acres over to you.
Wow. That's a lot of land.
So it's a pretty good piece of land when you can do that.
Yeah. So that, and where did you guys, or where did your dad try and set that up?
Okay, let me tell you a little bit about my dad before we left Salt Lake.
Uh-huh.
He was working. Well, he worked a couple of different things, and I'm not sure which was when, but he worked for a lot of rich people up in the upper parts of Salt Lake City. Then they were quite rich, and they had some kind of big estates. So he took care of their grounds for them, and also planted things for them, and so forth. But he also, at the same time, and I think before and sometimes during and after, he worked for a company called Porter Walton. It was
Okay.
a seed and plant company. They sold things all over the West, and my dad would actually take take the orders from different people, and then he would deliver the goods from Porter Walton, which would be shipped to him or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and take it to their place and plant it and help them plan their whole estate. Now that's the reason why he was called an architect,
Uh-huh.
landscape architect, because he not only worked planting it, but he worked planning it too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So he was doing that. Was he doing that the whole time or trying to do? I
I
mean,
don't know exactly, because I've just been told this. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know I've been told that he traveled to Idaho and to Nevada and a number of places around Utah, Idaho, and Nevada
uh-huh.
to sell things and to plant them for them. And sometimes he was gone from home for 2 or 3, for a week or more.
Yeah. Okay. And then you guys tried homesteading. Now, what were some of the do you remember some of the stuff that you guys did with that?
In fact, my first memories was when we started trying to homestead.
Uh-huh.
That's when I first started actually remembering it.
Okay.
And, what had happened is that my dad's brother, my Uncle Claire, he had already started a homestead down in that same area. This was down in southeastern Utah,
Okay.
the whole corner there against the Colorado border
Uh-huh.
was set up as a homestead area. There was a big area down there that was fairly flat, and it had mostly just juniper and the pinyon pine trees on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been down in that area. Pretty empty.
Yeah, it
And
is. It was.
pretty dry too, right?
It's south of where Moab is today.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
Moab was there then too, but it was not as big a city as it is now, of course. And it was just east of the city called, or the town actually, it was just a town called Monticello,
Okay. Yeah.
south of Moab, a little ways.
Yep. Okay.
And my Uncle Claire, he had a truck and quite a few things, and so he hauled us down there. We didn't have a lot of goods and properties because uh, my dad was, like I say, he worked at the landscape architecture, but he didn't. He was not wealthy by a long ways.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so when the Great Depression hit, then Everybody stopped spending their money, and so all his jobs just stopped like that.
Hmm.
And he tried for a while there in Salt Lake to get other work and so forth. And you want me to tell you about burning my hand? Because that was after the Great Depression started.
So that was, were you guys homesteading then?
No, we were still in Salt Lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in
Um,
the house.
I mean,
Actually,
yeah. Actually, what? Was
actually,
your,
my
sorry.
folks, my folks had bought or were buying a little home in Sugar House.
Okay.
They had lived a number of places in Salt Lake before that, where I had an older brother and an older sister born earlier than me, and
Okay.
then uh, and then I was born in this house that they bought or were buying in Sugar House, and
Uh-huh.
my younger brother Norman was born just about 2 years and a month after I was. He was
Okay.
also born there. And
Okay.
in fact, when we moved, he was just 6 months old or thereabouts.
So where do you fall in your siblings, Grandpa?
Where what?
Where do you fall? You
I'm
had
third from the oldest of a
your
family of
third
11.
third oldest of 11.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 8 younger siblings.
There were four boys and 5 girls. I mean,
Okay.
well, actually, I had 4 brothers and 5 sisters, is what it amounts to.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I had six
Um,
sisters. Excuse me, because there were 11 of us.
okay.
5 boys, 5 boys, and 6 sisters.
So with that story with the candy with your hand, because I have heard that one, um, was your mom trying to raise money by selling the candy? Is that what she was
That's
doing?
what she was doing, right? She
Okay.
would make candy and then sell it to the department stores up in the center of Salt Lake and get a little money. So we weren't completely broke all the time. She
Yeah.
made pretty good because she made quite a bit of candy. And
Uh-huh.
then she'd spend some of the money to buy more sugar, make more candy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, that's relevant, I think. Go ahead and tell me that story. I've heard it before, but go
Okay,
ahead.
I don't know how long she had been making candy before this happened, but it was probably about the end of November, around Thanksgiving or into December. I'm not sure when it was, but this was just before Christmas, and so she was making what became a Christmas candy. You see,
Okay.
she would make it, and then the stores would supply her with the fancy boxes, and she'd make it real nice and sell it to
Hmm.
them, and they'd give her, a pretty good price for it. She made all kinds would have different candy. Of course, most candy or all candy is made out of sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
so,
just about any candy is going to be really nice because it's all sugar, right?
right, sugar's not too good for you. I haven't eaten much sugar. And then
Yeah,
later, eat
I
too
don't eat
much.
much. I don't eat much sugar either. Sorry, go on, Grandpa.
Anyhow, this one day, I don't know what day of the week it was or anything, but I was 2.5 years old. It was in the fall, just before Christmas, late fall.
Uh-huh.
And my mother was making a batch of candy, and she had to start out by cooking that candy, or at least um, boiling it to a point where she can start working with it,
Yeah.
and doing with it. So she had a pot of candy on her wood cook stove that she had to put in, and of course it also burned coal, and I'm not sure which she was burning then.
Hmm.
But anyhow, I was watching her, and my little brother, of course, was just 6 months old, and so she heard him fussing in the other room, it wasn't very many room house. I think it only had about 3 rooms. But
Uh-huh.
he was in the bedroom and she was in the kitchen, of course. And I was in there watching her. And he started fussing in the bedroom. And so she left the candy boiling on the stove and headed in to get him.
Mm-hmm.
And what the matter was, and then she was going to come back to the candy. Well, while she was gone, I thought I would be helpful. So I pushed the chair up to the stove, climbed up on the chair, and I watched her a number of times. She'd take a little bit of the hot sugar, the boiling sugar out of the pot with a little spoon, or with a spoon, and
Mm-hmm.
hold it up enough till it cooled quite a bit. Then she would take it in her fingers and see how if it made a nice little hard ball.
Yeah.
To that point, then she was ready to start doing other things with it.
Uh-huh.
So I'd seen her doing that. So I pushed the chair up to the stove when I was going to do that. Only I thought, well, why not speed this up? Why take all that time to make the candy cool and so forth? Of course, I didn't know this, but I thought, so instead of taking a spoon to get the candy, I just dipped my whole hand down in that hot sugar, boiling
Yeah.
sugar.
Yeah.
And everybody in the house heard me scream and came running. And as they came, I was still standing on this chair, and I had pulled my hand out of the sugar. I guess I'd put it in pretty far. I don't know why I did that, but I did.
Yeah.
And they saw me rubbing my hand on my front, and as I rubbed it, the flesh came off from it, off the bones,
Yeah.
because it was really hot.
Yeah.
Sugar bone is about the hottest thing there is that you can put
Boiling.
on.
Yeah. Boiling sugar is pretty hot. Ooh, man.
So we didn't have a telephone, but some of the neighbors did, and so I think my dad ran her to someplace where he knew there was a telephone, and he called the doctor.
Uh-huh.
The doctor came. I don't know how long this took. It took an hour or two, I guess, for the doctor got there. And in the meantime, I guess most of the flesh had fallen off my fingers.
Yeah.
And he finally got there and looked at it, and he says, "Well, not the only thing I can see that we can do is amputate." Got my hand off
Arr, matey.
up above where it was burned.
Yeah.
And my mother, I think she was inspired. She would not let him do that.
Oof.
She was adamant about it. And so he just left, didn't do anything.
Uh-huh.
And my Uncle Claire had found out that up the Spanish Fork Canyon, he was a guy that traveled around quite a bit, Uncle Claire was. And he had up Spanish Fork Canyon, there was a resort where they had mineral water, they called it. They had a place where you take a bath in this mineral water, and then you could also buy it in bottles. And it was supposed to be a kind of a medicine,
Uh-huh.
He brought some of that. I don't know how long it took. I don't know the timing here, whether it was days or hours or what, but he might already had some. I'm not sure. Anyhow, he brought some of that, and my mother started soaking my hand in that mineral water. She'd soak it in there for an hour or two, and then bring it out. And within a few days, actually, the flesh started growing back on my hand.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how long this took, but it took probably, maybe 2 or 3 months before it was, well enough healed so you can call it pretty well healed.
Uh-huh.
But anyhow, it was that next spring that they realized that they were not doing too well as far as the depression was concerned. So that Uncle Claire talked my dad into this homesteading idea.
Uh-huh.
And I think my hand had healed enough by then, so it didn't affect, what I had to do, what I was doing.
Yeah. By the way, did that doctor ever come back and see your hand again?
I don't think he did. No, I think it was strictly up to my mother and then my Uncle Clarence.
Okay. So it was the next spring that you guys went south,
Right.
southern Utah. And then I remember you talking about a tent. Was that on your way to homesteading,
Okay.
or was that
Right.
coming back?
Yes. Right. Now, my brother would have been about 8 or 9 months old by then, you see. He was born
Yep.
in August. So in August, he would have been a year old. But and this was in the spring. I'm not sure exactly when in the spring, but it was about as early as you could start doing things in the spring. Maybe April, probably March, maybe.
Uh-huh.
And so he hauled us in his truck. The main thing he hauled in his truck was a cook, our wood burning cook stove. That was
Okay.
pretty important.
Yeah.
There was a few other items, but I don't think the truck was very loaded down because we didn't have much yet.
Yeah, there wasn't much stuff there.
It was important, and it plays a part a number of times in my life, that cook stove did. Anyhow, he held us down to a place not too far from where he had already established a homestead, just out east and a little bit more Monticello. That's south of Moab a little ways.
Okay.
So we set up under a juniper tree, I guess is what it was. Kind of a big juniper tree. They set the stove up right close to this juniper tree, so she had kind of a place to hang things and so forth on the limbs that were around. And they found an old army tent at one of the places where they stopped for water as they were going down there.
Uh-huh.
So they set up that tent right next to this. That was our home. That was what we lived in, that old army tent. But they didn't found it on the way down. It was still in pretty good shape, but whoever, I don't know whether they left it on purpose or whether they were throwing it away or what. But anyhow, that was they kept that tent for a number of years after that. It played quite a part.
Yeah. It's amazing how the Lord sets things up like that, because that was it. Doesn't matter.
The Lord was really involved in this whole thing because of the way things were.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's my first memories as living in that tent. Oh, there's one memory before that. We stopped at the partially finished house that my uncle had built on his homestead.
Okay. Uncle Claire, you said?
Setting up, huh?
Uncle Claire, was it?
Claire, uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, keep going.
Now, he had a son by the name of Claire, too.
Okay.
It was Claire Jr. He
Gotcha.
plays a part later, but...
Okay. So you stopped by, so you remember stopping by your uncle's in progress home then?
The only thing I remember about my uncle's homestead was that we stopped there for, I don't know, a night or two. And of course, to figure out where to set up with our homestead that we were trying to set up.
Uh-huh.
And, I know that Norman and I were both, I was 2.5, almost 3 years old, see? And he was just not quite 1 yet.
Yeah.
So they put us both in a big crib, that they had in those days. It's very similar to what cribs are today.
Yeah.
We put both in there, and I just remember them, and this is one of my first memories. I just remember them talking about whether that was adequate for the two of us to sleep in that crib together.
Uh-huh.
So, and I don't remember whether I slept in or not, but I think I did.
Okay, I guess that's fair enough, right?
Talking about whether it was adequate or not.
And you
But anyhow,
both woke up in the morning, so it must have been adequate.
right. And then we moved up to where we were going to homestead. And I don't know whether that was the same day or 2 or 3 days or what that we had been there. I was
Uh-huh.
still too young to have a memory that picked up everything, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So you were down there and you found the army tent. You were basically living in the army tent. Did the homesteading work out? Was your family
Oh,
able to make it happen?
that was the next part of the story I was going to tell you. Well, there's one incident first.
Okay.
They set up this cook stove. The pipe ran up through and was kind of tied into the juniper tree that was close to, so that the pipe, you know, that carried the smoke away was kind of up there a little ways. Well, my brother, my older brother Lawrence, he had been about he was 4 years older than I, so he'd been 6. If I was 3, and he was between 6 and 7 anyhow. And he climbed up in that juniper tree that the stove was by, or actually almost under, and he crawled out on a limb right above the stove while my mother was cooking on the stove. And that worried her. She was kind of worried. So what she did, she had a stool or something by that stove, and she jumped up on that stool and actually stood on that stove and grabbed my brother, and brought him down. And in the process, it burned the soles of her shoes, but it didn't burn her feet. So, number of incidents happen. You can see the Lord's hand in.
Yeah, one thing that I've been really just astounded at with my little ones is how many close calls they run into. Even just when they trip and fall, it sometimes is inches away from a wall. And you're
Right,
like, man, if that had been just a hair further, we would be dealing with an open head right now. But we're not.
right. And that was the case with me for a number of places, and my brothers, you see. And
Yeah.
anyhow, we lived in that tent and tried to homestead for, it was probably 2 or 3 months, I guess. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyhow, I just remember my folks going to meetings with other homesteaders, leaving us to sleep in the tent, kind of alone. Lawrence was the oldest one. The 3 of us there were just left. And they did that in those days. It wasn't too unusual to leave kids alone as long as they were, you know, it was night and they were sleeping.
Uh-huh.
I can remember them just kind of looking in the tent door to see if we were all right before they left.
Uh-huh.
In the evening sometimes. And they had to haul water in big barrels in a wagon. I'm not sure where that wagon came from, but anyhow, I can remember them hauling this water from a spring that was, probably about a mile away. And then they had the place to stick this big barrel of water up, and that was our home, this tent and this barrels of water that they would haul, and the stove that was put up under that was our homestead.